On today's episode, I talk about the favorites heading into the chase, as well as this week's first race at Chicagoland. Hey there guys, I'm Eric and welcome once again to Out of the Groove. Today's episode is mostly going to be looking forward to Chicagoland and the rest of the chase. Monday's episode, if you want to go back and watch that, talked about Richmond and all the craziness that happened there. And the one thing I learned from that video is apparently I should not say anything negative about any driver whatsoever. Even if the things I'm saying aren't even really that negative, they're just kind of observations. I got way more hate comments last week than I expected to, just for talking about Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman. I didn't even really choose a side. I said both were out of line and people didn't like that. At least the vocal ones didn't like that. So for this week's episode only, I'm going to do everything I can to not say anything negative about any driver. Let's see how this goes. Since I started these videos a couple weeks ago, I've gotten tons of comments from people asking me who I think the final four are going to be, who I think the favorites in the chase are, all that type of stuff. And I'm going to answer all those questions right here, right now, even though it's early. Everyone, all the analysts are giving their opinions. I figured I might as well throw mine out right here. Most of us are probably going to end up being wrong, but I might as well tell you what I think as of now. So I'll start with this first round of the chase here, Chicagoland, New Hampshire, and Dover. We started with 16 and only 12 can make it, and so the four that I think aren't going to make it are as follows. I personally do not have Jamie McMurray, Austin Dillon, Tony Stewart, or Chris Buescher making it out of round one. But I'm sure they're all wonderful people and they're going to have a great next season, even though Tony's retiring. Yeah, positive. Obviously for Chris Buescher, it's an honor just for him to be in the chase at this point. I mean, they got their win at Pocono on a rain delay and just barely snuck into the top 30 in points. So just for him to be in the chase these next three races, I'm sure his team's hoping for just consistent runs. And who knows, if something really crazy happens, if they are able to luck into a top 10 finish or some contenders get wrecked out multiple times, he could move on. I just do not see that happening. I have him missing the second round of the chase. Jamie McMurray and Austin Dillon, both teams have been, consistently top 15 teams for most races this season. But neither of them have wins, and neither have really been that close to getting any wins. So I just don't see them able to crack the top 10, top 12 that are going to have the Kevin Harvicks and Brad Keselowskis and Kyle Busch's. I just don't see them breaking into that part of the field. So that's why I don't have them moving on either. And the last spot here, it was very hard for me to choose because Tony Stewart is doing everything he can to try and prove to me and everyone else that he's a top 12 Chase Championship team. But incidences like this last week at Richmond or at Darlington the week before, and the fact that he has 4 DNFs on the season in just his limited number of races, still keeps me from picking him as a guy who can make any real noise in the chase. He could prove me wrong, but I do not personally see it. Now, the other guy that I'm almost on the fence on not making it might surprise a lot of you. Jimmie Johnson. Obviously, he's a 2-time winner this season. He's a Hendrick Motorsports driver. He and Chad Knaus have won 6 championships. I mean, how could I possibly not think they're a favorite? Well, as I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, the last couple months, they have not been very good whatsoever. Basically, every season I've watched of NASCAR the last 12 or so years, I mean, whenever a guy passes Jimmie Johnson on the racetrack, I think that's super impressive because he's just that good. But this season, and in particular the last couple months, he just really hasn't been that impressive. I mean, he's still a threat because he is Jimmie Johnson and he is a great driver. Chad Knaus is a good crew chief and everything, but I don't know if that equipment right now is really up to snuff. For the first time in I don't know how long, Hendrick Motorsports only has 2 drivers in the chase. Now, of course, obviously, part of that's due to Dale Jr.'s injury, but I think it might prove once and for all that Hendrick Motorsports has fallen down a step or so since their dominance several years ago. Now, I'm not going to rule Jimmie Johnson out for the championship yet, but he's coming into this chase with absolutely no momentum whatsoever. And so if a guy like Tony Stewart or even Jamie McMurray gets on a little hot streak here, Jimmie might be out in the first round. I don't know. I don't think he will, but it's definitely something that could happen. Well, now that I've got that out of the way, I might as well answer the big question that a lot of you have asked me. Who do I think will make it to the Final Four at Homestead in like 3 months or however long this chase is? Actually, it's 2 months. I suck at math. My Final Four may not be too surprising. I'm sure there's a decent amount of you that might have a very, very similar one, but here it goes. My Final Four is Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, and Denny Hamlin. And my champion is Kevin Harvick. That's the part that might surprise some of you, but I don't know. Now, some of the other guys I think are going to be very close calls are Martin Truex Jr., Kurt Busch, or even Kyle Larson. I would not be surprised if any of them snuck in. But you heard my Final Four. I don't think there's any major surprises. I mean, Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Keselowski, Harvick, they all have 2, 3, 4 wins this season. They've obviously run up front a lot. I don't think anyone would really argue any of those cases. But honestly, looking at the chase this year, this is probably the hardest chase grid to fill out I've seen, well, since the chase grid started a couple years ago. I'll be honest, I think Chase Elliott has almost as good a chance of winning as Brad Keselowski. I think this is going to be a very good chase, a very competitive chase for sure. And if Richmond is any indication, we're going to have some drama. Because right now, I'd say at least 14 or 15 out of those 16 drivers expect to compete for the championship this year. And if they run into problems, that's when tensions get high and you could have some crazy stuff happen in these next 10 weeks. The Joe Gibbs cars, Toyotas in general, I think are probably the overall favorites right now. But the Stewart-Haas Racing cars, especially Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick, or even the Penske guys, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, they are all capable of winning this championship. I wouldn't be surprised if any of them did. I have very high hopes for Kyle Larson this chase, just because he's coming in on a pretty good hot streak right now. He got the win at Michigan, he ran really well at Darlington, finished second at Richmond. That 42 team, they're on a mission. As I'm sure he is for a lot of you, he is definitely my biggest dark horse pick to win this championship. Wouldn't that be something? He goes from 2 or 3 years of kind of not quite getting up to expectations, not getting that win, and then over the course of like 3 months, he gets his first win, gets to the chase, wins the championship. That would be a heck of a finish to a 2016 season. I don't think anyone would have seen that coming in Daytona. This episode's honestly going to be pretty short because there's not much else to talk about. I mean, I could go on and on about each driver and how likely their chances are, but honestly, they're all pretty even. You got so many guys with 1 or 2 wins. You got Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski have 4 wins each. Hamlin has 3. You know, wins are important, but Kyle Busch and even Brad Keselowski aren't necessarily coming in on the the hottest streaks right now. Like I said, Kyle Larson or even Martin Truex, they've had some really good cars recently, and obviously the chase is 10 weeks long, so it's very hard to maintain momentum like that throughout. But at least for these first couple rounds, I think those are the guys you got to look to, and if they can get through those 2 rounds easily and carry a little bit of momentum, it continues to build. And I'm convinced that all these teams that are in the chase are all very, very talented. They're veteran teams for the most part, except for a couple, and I'm convinced that they know what they're doing and they'll be able to ride momentum. They're going to be able to take what they learn each week. They're going to be able to raise the level of their competition the way they do every year in the chase, the way we saw Newman or even McMurray do at Richmond last week. They stepped it up. I'm convinced all these guys are capable of doing that throughout the entire chase. It'll just be interesting to see who catches the brakes, who doesn't catch the brakes, who runs into trouble, who causes the trouble. I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Thank you all so much for watching. Please share, like I've said a bunch, share this with the NASCAR fans in your life. If you don't know any NASCAR fans, show it to people anyways. Introduce them to NASCAR. Let's continue to grow this community. It's a great community. It really is. Even when you guys are bashing me for saying negative things about Tony Stewart, which I don't think I did this episode. I'm on the ball. Yes. All right. Well, that's all I have to say. Thank you all so much for watching. I have a NASCAR parody, a short NASCAR parody coming out, I want to say next week. I don't know exactly when yet. I have to film it in my dorm room and record it in when like my neighbors could probably hear everything I'm doing, so they're gonna hear Tony Stewart talking like this or whatever. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to do that and still maintain some form of self-confidence, but I will do my best. I have a script written, and I think it's funny. So that's coming out next week. Hope you look forward to that. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter @DexRacing. And that's all the shameless plugs I have. Thanks for watching Out of the Groove. I'll be back on Monday.